Well, firstly, I'd like to say an enormous thanks to the Learning Society of Wales for awarding me this year's Dillwyn Medal for the Humanities and Creative Arts. This is a real honour for me, and I'm enormously grateful for it. My name is Dr. Ben Guy, and I'm presently a teaching associate in the Department of Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic in the University of Cambridge, which is one of the few places one can go to learn about Welsh history, language and literature outside of Wales. My research broadly is in the history, language and literature of medieval Wales, and especially I'm interested in the genealogies surviving in great abundance from the Middle Ages in Wales. I've been interested in Welsh history really since I was a child, growing up in North Wales and visiting the many amazing castles and abbeys and so on in North Wales. And this really kindled in me an interest in the early Middle Ages, in the Welsh princes, and also in the various stories embedded in the landscape in tales such as the Four Branches of the Mabinogi. The idea for my research really just came from the existence of a large body of genealogical writing surviving from medieval Wales. I'm sure that many family history researchers in Wales today will be familiar with the work of Peter Bartram, who tried to reduce this mass of genealogical material into an ordered form by publishing many hand-drawn genealogical charts right up to the 16th century, which modern family history researchers can often connect their families back to. But really, there was nothing at all about where any of that medieval and early modern genealogical writing came from in the first place, or indeed what it really means. This really is a vast body of material too, surviving in many hundreds of manuscripts, especially from the late medieval and early modern period. So despite the idea of generally poor historical source material surviving from Wales in the past, this is one area at least where Wales really does have a treasure trove of information waiting to be discovered. And moreover, this material carries the cultural memory of Wales with it, really, in a tradition spanning from the early Middle Ages, from as early as the 8th and 9th centuries, right through to the 18th century, when the tradition of manuscript writing in Wales really was still healthy and in full flow. And this material is interlinked with many of the legends and family stories and indeed power struggles that occurred within Wales over this time period. The genealogical material from medieval and early modern Wales has many implications for how we understand Wales as a whole. Not only the obvious stuff, so who's related to who, even quite far down the social scale by the time we get to the 16th century. But maybe more significantly, it has implications for how families were presented in such a way as to create an impression or an image of how Welsh society should work or should have worked from the perspectives of the various writers. And when this material is brought together and studied in a scholarly way, Wales can really make a substantial contribution to much broader debates about the place of family, of power, and of identity in the past and in the present, and really how people thought about that and perceived those things over time. Within Wales itself, it shows how the idea of Wales as an interconnected but always highly porous network of people has evolved over a very long period. And indeed, from the 9th to 16th centuries, that network could be portrayed in many different ways, depending on the different worldviews of the writers over time. In terms of the impact of my research, I really hope people begin to realise that the history of Wales is much richer than a catalogue of princely deeds, or even a list of who's related to who, the kind of things I'd thought about maybe when I was a bit younger prior to engaging with this research. Rather, I hope my research can show how the history of Wales involves everyone who's ever lived here, on every mountain and in every valley, all of which feature in the genealogical material. And all of these people can imagine this interconnected world, most importantly, in different ways. And in that way, Wales is really a land for everyone and always has been.